all of a sudden this alert come on my phone and is just looking at me and what is going on here? It was the year that the ballistic missile threat was accidentally pushed. It was huge because Hawaii and Pearl Harbor and everything. So what happened was there was a supposed threat for a ballistic missile to hit the island. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. You know what? We're 9+ miles into this race. We're in the middle of the forest. And the other guy, he and I looked at each other and we're just like, I guess we just keep running.
Yeah, run faster.
Right.
Welcome back.
Yes, it's been a while, but we are back.
How you feeling there, Norm, after your 100-mile adventure in the California wilds?
California high country?
Yeah, that's it.
Western states. Feeling okay. I'm running again, which is good.
Yeah.
What can I say?
Body's recovering?
Yeah, slowly but surely, just trying to keep moving. That is the key. Keep moving forward.
Sure is.
And what's happening in GottaRunRacing?
Well, at the time of the release of this podcast, we'll be a few days away from the inaugural Rainbow Trail Run in Alliston, Ontario.
I can't wait to get this one off the ground because we've been waiting so long to do so. It's been 3 years.
3 years since we've been planning, and then obviously with COVID, 2020 and 21 got deferred.
Right, so everyone's going to finally be pumped and ready to go.
Yeah.
And it's a cool course. I just like this course.
I do too. It's very runnable.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can run the whole thing. And there's a lot of sections where you come out and it's like, oh, wow, there's a river here.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And then there's a lake over there. And what's that deer doing in the corner? The corner of the trail. All right. So who's on the podcast today?
Today we have Jason Koomen, whom we met at the start line of Western States.
Yes. And we asked him the 4 questions that we asked everyone in the video that's on YouTube.
That's right. And we found out that he's a Canadian living in the States for, I think he said about 20 years.
And he's on a quest.
Indeed.
To complete a 100-miler in every state, which is not easy to do considering some states don't have 100-milers.
That's right.
So we're going to find out how he's going to conquer that.
That's right. And he just completed his 32nd 100-miler in Vermont not that long ago.
So I can't wait to talk about Western states. I can't wait to talk about his journey in Vermont and which ones he's going to do next. All coming up.
Welcome to the podcast, Jason.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. I'm really, really honored. So thank you.
We're very glad to have picked you out of the lineup the day before Western as you were collecting your bib and you went to have your photo taken. And that's when we learned your incredible story of going after a 100-miler in every U.S. state.
Yes. Yeah, it's been about an 8-year journey so far. So it all started by my wife. I'll say that. I was running some marathons at first. I think I ran 10 or 11 marathons maybe. And I had hit my goal of doing a sub 3-hour marathon. And so then it was kind of like, well, what's next?
Yeah.
And,
well, yeah, I'm gonna stop you because we don't want to get too far into that before we start. We like to start at the beginning. And of course, we'd like to also mention that you're a Canadian living in the U.S. You're in Ohio, is that right?
Yes, Northwest Ohio. Yep, about an hour and a half south of Detroit, roughly.
Now, what was your first ultra?
The very first ultra was honored here in Ohio, Burning River, so near Cleveland.
Okay.
And partially picked that because it was close. And again, it was one of those. My wife and I were both, I think, on our phones at the time, and we were looking at different things. And she saw that one, and why she's not a runner, but why she saw it or why she found it, she just said, well, why don't you do it? And I thought, that's quite a bit longer than just one marathon.
What was the distance of this one?
It was a 100-miler.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they had a 50, but
go big or go home.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that was the first one was in very early August of 2014, and I ran that in 20 hours and 21 minutes, I think, somewhere right around there.
Nice.
Those, as you both know, I mean, you go through many ups and downs in that course of an ultra, and but the experience of it and finishing in a good time, she was like, well, maybe this is your thing. So I found another one that was in Wisconsin in November, same year, so just a few months later, and it was the T-Bunk Challenge, is what it's called. And it's run on the same course as Kettle Moraine. And it was a 10-mile loop, and I did that in November, and I ended up running that one in like 17 and a half hours.
Wow.
And so to have like a 3-hour improvement was pretty neat. And she had been with me on both of those first two that I had done. And she said, I mean, why you've done two in two different states? Why don't you do one in every state? And I was like,
wow.
Well, that's 48 more. That's quite a bit, but so yeah, it kind of it quickly morphed from there, and it was, it's been great ever since.
There's some other races that piqued our interest that you did. One of them being the Salt Flats of Utah. Is that it?
Yes.
Tell us about that race. That I saw some video, and that seems like it's pretty epic.
It was, and so that was. I just did that one here just a couple of months ago in May. Unfortunately, this year, and I think it as the race director explained, she got an email at 3:30 in the morning. Unfortunately, we couldn't run the beginning roughly 10 miles on the salt flats because it all depends on the softness, and it's almost like running in mud. And so they had to divert us for the first 10 miles, but we were able to run the last 4 to 5 miles on the salt flats, which is right near the road that kind of, you come off the highway and there's maybe half a mile to a mile, and then you take a hard right. It's literally 4 straight miles out to where they have the markers and the plaques and everything for it to recognize as a state park and a national park and everything. So we were able to run right beside that road on the flats for that last 4 or 5 miles, which, at the end of 100 miles, you're pretty drained. but there's no shade out there whatsoever. You have some small brush that is a foot or 2 off the ground. You have maybe a handful or a dozen trees that are 6 foot tall, and so there's no shade at all in that entire course. So it's tough, and I don't do well in heat, so but I got it done. So
that's the Canadian in you.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting about this race because dogs are allowed.
Yeah, I did notice that, and I would say the majority of them, they aren't.
Right.
Had I had we have 3 dogs ourselves, and one of them really likes to run. Obviously, I wouldn't put him through 100 miles, but with my parents there, I could have taken him for 4 or 5 miles or something like that. So yeah, I don't recall seeing anybody that had a dog. I don't think I would have remembered had I seen one, but yeah.
Well, I think that's kind of cool. The fact that a dog can be with you from aid to aid or whatever they do. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of that is probably the fact that it is pretty isolated out there, not really homes or private property that you're going through by any means. So having a dog, it's not going to bother anybody,
Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
So. Yeah.
The second race that piqued our interest was the Rim to River in West
Yeah.
Virginia. Is that because
Yeah.
it's the only 100-miler there? That's why you had to do that one?
So, they actually have another one there. It's really, really small and hard to find. And I knew about it. But it didn't really intrigue me and time wise and then getting it in, I think it's early March. And the race director who got Rim to River started, this will be 2022 will be year number 3. The year that I did it in 2020, which ironically enough was COVID year, that was their inaugural year. And he's originally from that area and he's run those trails, over and over and over again. I think he had said he had been working on getting a 100-miler there for a 10-year time period to get all the permitting right and get it all done correctly. And and it's a beautiful course. And that time of year, early November in West Virginia, is just gorgeous, So I really enjoyed it. It was a great race,
but not an easy race. It's 13,000 feet of elevation.
Yes, there's quite a bit of elevation, but it's not really technical. So that's the kind of nice part about it. There's a couple of little areas that are technical, but the single track trail running that you're doing and you're climbing and descending is not very technical at all. So that is enjoyable. I mean, there's a lot of switchbacks that you're going through, and you obviously can't just 100% let yourself go, but definitely not a herd or a Western States, I would say, by any means.
Now, the other one that stood out to us because of the show, Ozark. Another one with a lot of climbing as well. How did that go?
That one was a tough one. Timing wise, it was probably the bottom 4 or 5 for me, ultimately finishing time wise. But it's a nice course. What's interesting about that one is they bus you from the start to the finish at about 3:30 or 4 in the morning. You leave on school buses. Kind of like Boston Marathon is, but you're going to have to drive quite a bit further to get to the start. And then you're very kind of unceremonious start in the sense of that you're on this, path. There's not really like a big arch to start or anything like that. It's just 100 or so runners in the middle of the forest. And okay, 3, 2, 1, go. Trail is beautiful. There is some technicality to it, but I think the biggest challenge, honestly, is because of where it's located and the time of the year. The majority of the leaves have fallen, and so you're running on inch or 2 thick of leaves, and so you can't tell if you're on top of a stone and you're about to roll or not, and that's part of what slowed me down. But just wanting to be safe and make sure that I completed it. And I had another gentleman that I had met at a previous race. He was out there in Ozark, and he had to DNF at, I think, around mile 30 or somewhere around there because he had fallen. He had a pretty good gash on his nose and his head, and so wasn't good. And he hated to DNF, but that was. It's a really pretty area, really nice. I would love to say I would be there in the late September, October timeframe when the leaves are still on the trees, but that race has been that time of year for a number of years, and by no means I think that suggest to the race directors you need to have it earlier. I mean that's what they do. So.
A lot of different challenges with a point to point. I guess in a positive way,
yes.
You kind of have to get to the end. You aren't as tempted to stop because it's not a loop, but you're out in the middle of nowhere, and there's no other than your watch. There's really no bearing of where you are in terms of just getting through it mentally, I think.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I would, and especially when you're not familiar with the area.
I was just wondering, how do you choose your race as far as difficulty or time of year or anything like that? Like, how do you plan to make your year of these 100-milers?
Sure. It really, I mean, there's a lot of different factors, honestly. I don't really look at it as to worrying about the difficulty of it so much. I just look at, because I don't want to look at it, or somebody look at me and say, well, you did a bunch of flat races and there were small little 1 mile loops or anything like that, which I've done. But, somewhat you're limited too, because not every state has one. And so if that state only has one and that's your only choice, then that's your only choice. So like Rhode Island, the only one they have is around a state park, beautiful little state park, and it's a 243-mile loop. It's called Anchor Down Ultra. But the only one you can, so it's kind of like, well, I kind of have to do it. And now it might be flat, but it's in the middle of August and it is humid. It is super, super humid. Yes. So that factors into it. That factors in. But as far as difficulty, like with Western states, that was the one in California. I know California has, I don't know how many, probably 20 to 30 plus 100-milers. I mean, they have tons. But early on, Burning River, which was the very first one I did, it's a qualifier for Western states. So right away, I had put my ticket in, or that first year, and ultimately it took 7 years. But so it wasn't like, hey, I just want to do whatever in California. I'm determined, and I will go back to Western and complete it. But
and Western State is going to be your California 100-miler,
no matter what.
Correct.
You're not going to do anything else in California but Western.
It'll be my first one. If I do more, then I might. But yes, correct.
Very good.
And since you've mentioned it, let's talk about Western. So how are you feeling at the start line?
Always feeling good. Nervous, but I get nervous at any of them, whether they're flat and they're point to point, or they're technical, or whatever. A lot of that nervousness is just because I've never been there. I know about it, and even if I've done 30 of them or 32 now, you still get nervous and you just get butterflies, and especially for Western states because of what it is. I was feeling good, but then in the back of my mind, I was skeptical, and that skepticism was because of the lack of training, honestly. Right. Living in Northwest Ohio, my biggest hill to train on, and this is not an exaggeration by any means, my biggest hill to train on is an overpass.
Oh, are you serious?
I am 100% serious. And we
had it bad.
At least we have a ski hill.
Yeah. No, to get to a ski hill around here is probably an hour drive, and that's a very small ski hill. It's not anything that, think that there's elevation to that. So, and we're here in Findlay, I think we're at 800 or 900 feet of elevation. So, it's not like we're flat, but yet 8,000 feet of elevation. It's you're low, and but I know that I could have done some training on treadmills as far as trying to get better at it, do more miles, just more miles in general. I feel like heat wise, I was trained okay. I didn't feel like I experienced, yes, it was hot, and it was hot for everybody, but it here in Ohio, it was hot and humid. The last part of May and first part of June, we had 90 plus degrees and humidity. So, and I trained in it. I went out purposely a couple of times in the middle of the day to experience it. So I don't think that affected me as much, but it was definitely the climbing and You know, yeah, I know what I need to do, and I know I took it for granted a little bit. I know that. Took a long, hard look at right after the race and flying home and saying, it took me this long to get here. I'm not going to screw it up again.
To get yourself back to Western, Jason, you're going to have to be a little strategic now as to which qualifiers you're choosing, because it's still going to take another, unless you get lucky, which we hope you get lucky, but it could be another 7 years.
It could be. I hope it's not, for two reasons. That means I'm 7 years older, and it's not like I know we like to think to ourselves that we get better as we age, but that's only in certain perspectives, I think. Maybe not so much in the running part of it, but the other part of it is that, with this journey that I'm on, I really would like to finish. I kind of have it mapped out, at least roughly when I'm doing these last 18, when they're going to be, and I want to finish by the time I turn 50. So, and that only gives me 3 more years. So
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But I've got one ticket since I just finished Vermont.
Yes.
Vermont is a qualifier, so I've got one ticket. So this year I'm good.
I will be putting my one ticket as well because I finished Western. So hopefully you and I both get in. I guess.
Right.
You mentioned that, and I didn't think of this earlier, but that not all states have 100-milers. So which ones don't that you haven't found yet?
So up until recently, there were 3. And just in the last month and a half, maybe 2 months, Nebraska has added one. Now they call it the Cowboy 200, but they have a 100-miler built within it as well.
Okay.
So a lot of events now are popping up because it's always let's go bigger, let's go better, let's do something different. So a lot of 200s are out there now, and they're initially billing it as a Cowboy 200, but like I said, the 100's built in there. The latest one that just came out a few weeks ago was in Mississippi. They've had a 50-miler for a number of years, and I actually reached out to the race director 2 or 3 years ago, and I said, "Hey, any chance you might bump that up to 100? Just curious." And at the time, they said no, they didn't have any plans to. But he said, if we ever do, I'll reach out to you. And sure enough, they decided to bump it up to a 100-miler or include 100 as part of their weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And so I signed up for it. It's in March of next year. So signed up for that right away. So the last state right now that does not have one is Delaware.
Aha.
Wow.
So,
are you aware of how many people have already achieved this goal?
Because Delaware doesn't have one and these other 2 states are brand new to 100-milers, I honestly don't know from an official standpoint if anybody has done it.
Right.
Maybe from an unofficial standpoint they have.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty certain somebody has across the way done an ultra in every state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And whether that's 50K or 100K, whatever it is, that's cool. That's awesome. But since there isn't a 100-miler in every state, I don't, from an official standpoint, I don't know if anybody has at this time.
Right. So there's no club, 100-mile club every state.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have any other big goals?
Across Canada?
It's funny. I do. I'm not sure exactly what yet. I've kind of got 2 ideas in my head. Maybe even a third. My dad, who is 74, when he was 69, so 5 years ago, he cycled across Canada.
Wow.
And so part of me is thinking I'd love to do the same route that he did, but run it.
Mm-hmm.
The other idea I had was to possibly do a Terry Fox run, his route that he had planned, and recreate that and ultimately finish it.
Is there any crazy stories or things that stand out that you've experienced so far that you think our listeners would get a kick out of hearing?
On any of these races?
Yeah. So there's stories to every one of them, as you guys know, and I think the craziest one for me was doing Hurt, and Hurt's in Hawaii. The year that I did it was 2018, and my wife and I both went, kind of did a little bit, turned it into a mini vacation as well. I had never been to Hawaii before, she had. The way that Hurt works is it's kind of like it's a loop course. It's 20 miles, but it's kind of like I picture it, and I try to tell people it's kind of like a tripod, where you start and you go up the mountain, and then you come down to the first aid, kind of come back up the mountain, you go down to the second aid, you kind of come back up, and then you come back to the start finish, and that's one loop. Now you don't run on that exact same path, like back up exactly. Some of it you do, but we had, I was running with another gentleman at the time. We had gotten to the first aid station, or at mile 9. We had just left that aid station, literally 3 minutes out of the aid station, and we started to climb huge boulders. And all of a sudden, I carry my phone usually when I do these races. In the event I'm in a low spot and I need to call my wife and she needs to give me some motivation or whatever it might be. But all of a sudden, this alert come on my phone, and it's just looking at me. And what is going on here? It was the year that the ballistic missile threat was accidentally pushed. And I don't know how big of it I think it was in Canada or announced, but across the US it was huge because Hawaii and Pearl Harbor and everything. So what happened was there was a supposed threat for a ballistic missile to hit the island.
Oh my God.
And so we get this alert, and the guy that I'm running with, he and I look at each other like, what is going on? And so I actually, and I had service, I was able to call my wife. She said, you wouldn't believe it. People are going crazy. There are people literally like crashing cars and going into super grates and everything to like get away, thinking that they'd survive this ballistic missile, and like just panic, pandemonium, panic, whatever you want to call it. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. You know what? We're 9+ miles into this race. We're in the middle of the forest. And the other guy, he and I looked at each other, and we're just like, I guess we just keep running.
Run faster.
Right. We're going to get away from it. We're as fast as we can. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
That's crazy.
So,
I think you'd be you're in a safe spot because.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Up in the mountains?
So it was surreal, and so for about 20 minutes of time, your adrenaline's going, of course, and so that got us going. And it was just really, really weird. And then 20 minutes later ish, they came back through with another, that was a false alarm, and no need to worry. And we're like, oh, okay.
They said sorry. Sorry. And I'm just curious if Hurt is the hardest one you've done that you finished. The Hurt was the hardest one?
Yes.
Yes, I can imagine that. Yes, because we did talk to so many people who've done Hurt, and they still can't sleep at night because of it.
Yeah. Yeah. If I don't see another route in my lifetime, I'm okay with that.
Got it.
Well, This has been amazing. Jason, thank you so much for sharing your journey so far. You're 2/3 of the way in, so we'll be cheering you on to get to all 50 for sure.
And we're going to have you back when you get your 50th.
Yeah, absolutely we will.
That would be terrific. I would love that. I've enjoyed talking to you guys for sure, and enjoy sharing my experiences, and that's not just for me, but going to do all these different races. As you guys know, the ultra community, it doesn't matter where you're from, whether you're Canadian or you're from the U.S. or you're from overseas. The people are they're awesome. I love it. That's one of the biggest bonuses for me of going through this journey, is meeting so many people, and everybody has been wonderful. They've got their own journey they're on, their path they're on, and just hearing from those other people and hearing what they are is what pushes me, honestly. And during these events, whether they're 20 hours, 25 hours, I think about that stuff. Besides my family, I think about those things, and we're definitely blessed to be able to do what we can do, and I just really enjoy doing it.
100%.
Done with my journey of this 50 states. That I want to go back to each of these races that I've done and volunteer at some point.
Oh, yeah.
Do an aid station, help out the race director in some way, and even others. And my wife knows that, and so it's not something to where she's going to be surprised by. But yeah, and I know there's several races that we didn't necessarily get to or talk about. So feel free to email me, shoot a note, and ask any questions if you're thinking of one, or you're like, hey, what's this one all about? Just shoot me a note, and
I know
we will
gladly respond.
we looked at your long list and we had to break it down to what just piqued our interest. But honestly,
Sure.
In person around a campfire, I could pick your brain all night. So
I would love that, and hopefully we do meet at a race sometime, and we can run some miles together. And that'll be, it's not like a 5K where you're only together for 20 minutes. We'll together for a few hours. So absolutely.
Yeah, that would
Wonderful.
be awesome. Okay.
And I'll love sharing with my family and friends. Absolutely.
Have a great evening.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thanks. You guys too.
Bye.
Bye.
And there you have it, Jason Koomen.
What a lovely guy.
Yep, and quite a quest. Quite a quest.
Quite a quest. Say that 5 times fast. Yeah, he's doing it. 32 down and
18 to go.
18 to go.
There's our math for you. 18 to go. And Hurt so far was the hardest and most interesting. But hey, out of the 18 left, who knows what could be harder than Hurt.
What a shame about Western, too, because we all know.
Yeah.
Unless he's got luck on his side, it's going to be really hard to get back into that one before he's 50,
Before he's 50, yeah. And he wants California, the state of California, to be Western first, then whatever.
Yeah. Well, we're cheering for him.
Yep. And, we can't wait to, when he finishes his 50 state, that we're going to have him back.
Have him back again.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's going to be even...
And if you want to support our cause of being here for the next 4 years, check out our Patreon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Shameless plug.
Yes, we do have Patreon. Okay. Until next time.
Cheers.
Bye.